What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved stars walks onto a morning talk show expecting a friendly conversation, only to be met with condescension, disrespect, and accusations that ultimately push him to do something no guest has ever done on live television? In just 47 seconds of one single comment, Savannah Guthrie would ignite a firestorm that led to Jamie Foxx being escorted off the set in front of millions of viewers. It started like any other morning on the Today Show. The lights were bright, the cameras were rolling, and the studio audience buzzed with excitement. Jamie Foxx walked onto the set with his signature smile, waving to the crowd as they erupted in applause. He was there to promote his latest film, a project he had poured his heart and soul into for over 2 years. He sat down on the couch next to Savannah Guthrie, with Hoda Copeland and Craig Melvin seated nearby, ready to join the conversation. "Welcome, welcome," Savannah said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "So glad you could make time for us in your busy schedule." There was something in her tone. Jamie noticed it immediately, but brushed it off. He had done hundreds of interviews. He knew how to handle anything. "Thanks for having me," Jamie replied warmly. "Always great to be here with you all." Savannah glanced down at her cards, then back up at Jamie. "So, this new movie of yours, have to say. I watched it last night, and I have to be honest with you, Jamie. I was a little confused about why you took this role." The audience fell silent. That was not the usual opening question. Hoda shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Jamie kept his composure. "Well, you know, it's a character I really connected with. The story is about redemption, about second chances. And I think that's something we all can relate to." Savannah leaned back, crossing her arms. "But don't you think you're a little old to be playing an action hero at this point? I mean, you're not getting any younger." There in the studio changed. Craig's eyes widened. Hoda looked down at her lap. The audience murmured, "Names?" Jamie's smile faded slightly, but he maintained his professionalism. "I don't think age has anything to do with telling a good story. Some of the best action films have starred actors in their 50s and 60s. Harrison Ford, Liam Neeson, Denzel Washington." Sure, Savannah interrupted, waving her hand dismissively. "But those are different situations. They have a certain gravitas. I'm just wondering if maybe you should be thinking about transitioning into more, I don't know, appropriate roles for where you are in your career." Jamie's jaw tightened. "Appropriate roles. Yes," Savannah continued, seemingly oblivious to the growing tension. "I mean, you're not the young comedian from In Living Color anymore. Maybe it's time to accept that and move into character roles, supporting parts. Let the younger generation take the lead." Hoda finally spoke up, trying to redirect. "I actually thought Jamie was fantastic in the film. The action sequences were incredible, and the emotional depth he brought to the character was really moving." Savannah shot Hoda a look that could freeze water. "I'm conducting the interview, Hoda." Hoda's face flushed. She nodded and went quiet. Jamie leaned forward. "Savannah, I appreciate your opinion, but I have to respectfully disagree. I trained for 6 months for this role. I did my own stunts. I gave everything I had to this character, because I believed in the story." "Oh, you did your own stunts?" Savannah said with a smirk. "How brave. I'm sure your stunt coordinator was thrilled to have to worry about you breaking a hip." The audience gasped. Craig put his hand over his mouth. This was crossing a line, and everyone in the studio knew it. Jamie's expression hardened. "Excuse me. I'm just saying," Savannah continued, her voice dripping with condescension. "Maybe you should leave the dangerous stuff to people who are actually in their prime. This whole midlife crisis action star thing is getting a little tired, don't you think?" Jamie stood up, removing his microphone. "I think we're done here." Savannah laughed, a sharp, mocking sound. "Oh, come on, Jamie. Don't be so sensitive. Just being honest. Isn't that what you Hollywood types always say you want? Honesty. There's a difference between honesty and disrespect, Jaime said, his voice calm but firm. And you've crossed that line about 5 times in the last 3 minutes. Craig tried to intervene. Hey, let's all just take a breath here and maybe we can restart this conversation. Savannah ignored him. Sit down, Jaime. You're being ridiculous. This is exactly the kind of diva behavior people talk about. Diva behavior, Jaime repeated, his voice rising slightly. I came here to talk about my work, not to be insulted on national television. You're being insulted. Savannah scoffed. I'm trying to have a real conversation with you, and you can't handle it because you're so used to people kissing up to you. This is journalism, Jamie. Maybe you should stick to the softball interviews on the late-night shows if you can't handle real questions. Hoda stood up. Savannah, I think maybe we should take a break. Sit down, Hoda, Savannah snapped. This is my segment. Jaime shook his head in disbelief. You know what? I've been in this industry for over 30 years. I've done interviews in every format you can imagine. And I have never, not once, been treated with such blatant disrespect. Oh, please, Savannah rolled her eyes. You're being dramatic. I'm being dramatic. Jaime's voice was incredulous. You just suggested I was too old to do my job, compared me unfavorably to other actors, mocked my physical abilities, and called me a diva. And I'm being dramatic. The audience was completely silent now, watching this unfold like a car crash. In slow motion, cameras continued to roll, capturing every moment. Savannah leaned forward, her expression hardening. You know what your problem is, Jamie? You can't handle criticism. You're so wrapped up in your own ego that the moment someone doesn't bow down and tell you how amazing you are, you fall apart. Craig stood up this time. Savannah, this needs to stop right now. She ignored him completely, her focus locked on Jaime. I've interviewed dozens of A-list celebrities, and most of them have the grace and maturity to handle tough questions. But you're acting like a child who didn't get his way. Jaime took a step back, his hands up in a gesture of surrender. I'm not doing this. I'm not going to stand here and let you attack me for no reason. Running away, Savannah taunted. That's really professional. What is wrong with you? Jaime finally snapped, his voice cutting through the studio. What did I do to you? I came here in good faith. I prepared for this interview. I was ready to talk about my work, my craft, the people I collaborated with. And from the moment I sat down, you've done nothing but try to tear me down. Savannah stood up too, matching his energy. I'm doing my job. I'm asking the questions that people actually want answers to. Not everyone wants to hear your rehearsed talking points about your process and your passion. You call this doing your job, Jaime shot back. This isn't journalism. This is a personal attack. There's no story here, no investigation. You're just being mean for the sake of being mean. Hoda tried again. Guys, please, we're live. We have an audience. We have millions of people watching at home. Savannah whirled on Hoda. Then, maybe they'll finally see what it's like when someone doesn't play along with the Hollywood publicity machine. Jaime grabbed his jacket from the back of the couch. I feel sorry for you, Savannah. I really do. 'Cause whatever is making you act this way, whatever you're going through, it's eating you up inside. And you're taking it out on me. Don't you dare psychoanalyze me, Savannah hissed. You don't know anything about me. You're right. Jaime said, his voice softer now, but still firm. But I know that hurt people hurt people. And right now, you're trying to hurt me because of something that has nothing to do with me. Savannah's face flushed red. Get out. Get off my set. Your set. Craig interjected. I said get out, Savannah shouted, pointing toward the exit. You want to leave so badly? Then leave. We don't need you. This show was doing just fine before you got here, and it'll be doing fine after you're gone. Jaime nodded slowly. You're absolutely right. You don't need me, but I hope one day you figure out why you felt the need to do this. Because this wasn't about me. This was about you. He turned to the audience. I apologize to all of you for this. You came here expecting something very different, and I'm sorry you had to witness this. The audience applauded, a smattering at first, then growing louder. Some people stood up. Savannah's expression twisted into something ugly. Oh, how touching, she said mockingly. The big star apologizing to his fans. What a hero. Jaime ignored her, turning to Hoda and Craig. It was good to see you both. I'm sorry it ended this way. Hoda had tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry, Jaime. Craig shook his hand. Take care, man. As Jaime started to walk off the set, Savannah couldn't let it go. That's right. Walk away. Run back to your mansion and your Yasmin, who tell you everything you want to hear. See if I care. Jaime stopped. He turned back around, and for a moment, everyone thought he might return to the couch. Instead, he looked directly into the camera. To anyone watching who's ever been talked down to, dismissed, or disrespected for no reason, I want you to know that you don't have to accept that treatment. You have every right to stand up for yourself with dignity and walk away from situations that don't serve you. Don't let anyone make you feel small. The audience erupted in applause. People were on their feet, cheering. Savannah stood frozen. Her face a mask of rage and something else, embarrassment, maybe, or shame. Are you done with your speech? She called out, but her voice cracked slightly. Jaime didn't respond. He simply walked off the set, his head held high. As he disappeared behind the cameras, a producer rushed onto the set, whispering urgently to Savannah. Well, she said, trying to regain control, her voice shaky. That was certainly unexpected. When we come back, we'll be talking about holiday shopping tips. But the damage was done. The audience was still buzzing, people talking among themselves. Hoda had her face in her hands. Craig was shaking his head in disbelief. Savannah stood there, isolated in the center of the chaos she had created, trying desperately to pretend everything was fine. As they cut to commercial, the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. A simple interview about a movie had transformed into a public confrontation that no one would forget. Jaime Foxx had come to promote his work and had been subjected to an unprovoked attack. He had defended himself with grace and strength, refusing to engage in the mudslinging while also refusing to be a doormat. Savannah had pushed and pushed, expecting Jaime to either cower or explode in a way that would make him look bad. Instead, he had done something far more powerful. He had simply refused to participate in her game. He had recognized the situation for what it was. No win scenario designed to humiliate him, and he had chosen to remove himself from it. The studio audience had witnessed something rare on live television, a genuine moment of conflict, where the person being attacked handled themselves with dignity and poise. They had seen someone stand up for themselves without stooping to insults or aggression. They had seen what it looks like when someone values their self-respect more than staying in a toxic situation. Backstage, Jaime was surrounded by concerned staff members apologizing profusely for what had happened. He assured them he was fine, that he understood it wasn't their fault. His publicist was already on the phone doing damage control, though it was becoming clear that Jaime would not be the one needing damage control. Meanwhile, on set, as the commercial break continued, Savannah was in a heated discussion with producers. Hoda and Craig had moved away from the main couch, distancing themselves physically from what had just transpired. The audience members were pulling out their phones, undoubtedly already texting friends and posting on social media about what they had just witnessed. When the show returned from commercial, Savannah was alone at the desk. Hoda and Craig were noticeably absent. She attempted to continue with the show as planned, but her usual confidence was gone. Her hands trembled slightly as she held her notes. Her smile looked painted on, artificial. "Welcome back," she said, her voice not quite steady. "As I mentioned, we're going to talk about holiday shopping, but first, I want to address what just happened." She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. Television is unpredictable. Sometimes interviews don't go as planned. Sometimes personalities clash. I stand by my questions. I believe in asking the hard questions and having real conversations, even when they're uncomfortable. It was not an apology. It was not even an acknowledgement that she had done anything wrong. It was a justification, a doubling down, and the audience's reaction showed they were not buying it. The polite applause was sparse, obligatory. But this moment, this attempt to save face, only highlighted how badly she had miscalculated. Jamie Foxx was beloved. He had built a career on talent, hard work, and treating people with respect. Asterisk, he had won an Academy Award. He had succeeded in music, comedy, and drama. He had earned his place in the industry through decades of dedication, and Savannah had treated him like he was nothing, like his accomplishments meant nothing, like he should be grateful she was even giving him airtime. The entitlement in her attitude had been palpable from the very first question. The condescension had dripped from every word. And when he had dared to push back, when he had dared to defend himself, she had lashed out even harder. The rest of the show limped along. The holiday shopping segment felt hollow. The cooking demonstration was awkward. The energy in the studio had completely deflated. What should have been a routine morning of television had become something else entirely, a cautionary tale about what happens when ego and cruelty overtake professionalism. In the final minutes of the show, as Savannah signed off, her smile looked more like a grimace. Hoda and Craig had returned for the closing, but they stood stiffly, clearly uncomfortable. The usual banter was absent. The warmth that morning shows rely on had evaporated. "Join us tomorrow," Savannah said to the camera, "when we'll be talking with a celebrity chef about Thanksgiving recipes." The camera pulled back to show all three hosts on the couch, but the image told the story. Hoda and Craig angled slightly away from Savannah. The distance between them was more than physical light, was a visual representation of the fracture that had occurred as the credits rolled and the show went off air. The studio erupted into activity. Producers were scrambling, assistants were whispering, and somewhere in the building, Jamie Foxx was likely already gone, having left the building. With his dignity intact and his reputation, if anything, enhanced by how he had handled an impossible situation. The interview that was supposed to be a simple promotional appearance had become something far more significant. It had become a moment that would be discussed, analyzed, and remembered, not because of what was said about the movie, not because of any insights into Jamie's creative process, but because it had revealed something true about character, about respect, about how we treat each other. Jamie had walked onto that set as a guest. He had left as someone who had stood up for himself, and, in doing so, had stood up for everyone who had ever been in a similar position. He had shown that you don't have to accept mistreatment, that you can respond to hostility with composure, and that walking away is sometimes the strongest thing you can do. And Savannah, she had revealed herself in ways she'd probably never intended. Her need to dominate the conversation, to be the center of attention, to cut down someone successful, had been on full display. Her inability to recognize when she had crossed a line, her refusal to apologize or even acknowledge the harm she had caused, had shown a fundamental lack of empathy and self-awareness. The confrontation had been building from the first moment. Every question had been designed to provoke. Every comment had been calculated to diminish. And when Jamie had responded with grace and professionalism, only asserting his boundaries when they were clearly violated, Savannah had escalated further. She had pushed him to react, to give her the explosive moment she seemed to want. But Jaime had denied her that. He had refused to play the role she had written for him. He had not yelled. He had not cursed. He had not insulted her. He had simply stated facts, called out the behavior for what it was, and removed himself from the situation. It was masterful in its simplicity and devastating in its effectiveness. The audience had recognized it. They had seen through the performance Savannah was trying to put on. They had understood that this was not about tough journalism or hard questions. This was about something personal, something ugly, and they had responded by supporting Jaime, by applauding his departure, by recognizing his humanity in a moment when it was being denied. As the studio emptied and the staff began cleaning up, for the next segment, the weight of what had happened lingered in the air. This was not just another day at the Today Show. This was not just another interview gone wrong. This was a moment that would be replayed, discussed, and debated, a moment that would be studied in media classes as an example of how not to conduct an interview. A moment that would live on far beyond the 2 hours of morning television it had. Interrupted, Jamie Foxx had come to talk about his movie. He had left having delivered a much more important message about dignity, respect, and self-worth. And in the end, that was the story people would remember. Not the film he was promoting. Not the question Savannah had asked, but the way he had handled himself when faced with unexpected hostility and disrespect. The cameras had stopped rolling. The lights had dimmed. But the impact of those 47 seconds and everything that followed would resonate far beyond that studio. Far beyond that morning, and far beyond what anyone had anticipated when Jamie Foxx had walked onto that set with a smile and the simple expectation of being treated with basic human decency.